This is a chocolate cake I get asked for the most. This is a triple layer chocolate cake made slowly and intentionally. I'll show you exactly how I put all the layers together later on in the video. We use the best quality ingredients we can, like Valrhona cocoa powder, because the flavor really shows in a recipe like this. This is the best chocolate cake you'll ever have because we use the best cocoa powder we can find. Once that's done, we'll add our granulated sugar, and then we'll add our salt and our baking soda and our baking powder as well. I like to weigh my bulk dry ingredients, and then I'll use a measuring spoon for the rest. One ingredient that really gives this cake depth is espresso powder. I highly recommend adding that to this recipe just because it adds so much flavor to it. Now we're just going to mix all our dry ingredients together and put this off to the side. In another bowl, we'll get our wet ingredients together. So we'll start with our eggs, then we'll add our vanilla, and then we'll add our oil. So I like to use a neutral oil, like a grapeseed oil, which is what we're using here. Give the wet ingredients a whisk, and then we're gonna add in our buttermilk. Instead of buying buttermilk, we actually made our own buttermilk, which is super easy to make, and I tell you how to do it in this recipe here. Once the wet ingredients have been mixed, we'll add that to the dry ingredients bowl, and then we'll give this a good mix until it's just about all the way combined. And you could use an electric stand mixer, but honestly, this comes together so quickly, I just use a bowl. Once this just starts to come together, we'll add our hot coffee to this batter, and we'll just mix this batter until it becomes nice and smooth. We'll then pour all this batter into a pan, and we're gonna bake this off in the oven until it just starts to set in the middle. This cake does cook pretty fast, so make sure you keep an eye on it in the oven. And while we're waiting for this to cool off, we're gonna make our buttercream. As always, we use the best quality ingredients, so we're using some Kerrygold here. You wanna make sure your butter is room temperature so that it actually creams and gets nice and soft and pillowy while you mix it. Otherwise, you're going to end up with lumps. Once the butter's been whipped, we're going to add the rest of our ingredients. So we're going to start with our cocoa powder, then we'll add our cream, and then our vanilla, and then our salt. This is just a classic buttercream that goes really well with this cake. So once we get all these ingredients in here, we're going to move on to our powdered sugar. And we're just going to slowly add in the powdered sugar while we're whipping everything else together. And we'll just let this go until it becomes one nice, beautifully smooth, consistent buttercream. I'm typically not a fan at all at buttercream. In fact, I usually just scrape it off of the cake when I eat it, but this one is different and it's more like a ganache. Now that our cake is cooled, we're moving on to cutting our rings out of this to make our triple layer chocolate cake. So we have a 6-inch ring mold, and you'll get 2 full rounds and then 2 halves. And what we'll do is we'll cut all of our cake rounds out, and then we're gonna start with those halves on the very bottom of the cake, since that's not going to be what you're going to see. One quick and easy way to make professional looking cakes is to use these acetate sheets. So what we'll do is we'll just put our ring mold down and put our acetate sheets in there. And we're going to just do layers of basically the cake and then the buttercream. We're looking for 3 layers of cake, so we'll get this buttercream down and we'll do this 2 more times until we have 3 layers of cake and then buttercream in between each layer. As you can see, this cake is extremely moist, so you just want to be careful when you're doing these layers and you don't break any of these layers when you're stacking them in here or pushing too hard on the buttercream. With this recipe, I always end up with a little extra buttercream at the end just because I don't make my layers too thick, but if you like buttercream, maybe you'll just want to put more in between each layer. This cake ends up being really rich just because it's so tall and there are so many layers of the buttercream in the cake on this one. At this point, if you have room in your fridge and a little extra time, it makes this a lot easier if you can put it in the fridge and let all of this set, just because it makes it one solid piece of cake like you can see here. If you don't refrigerate it, it's not going to stand very tall and you're going to have a really hard time finishing decorating this. If you've never made a triple layer cake like this before, this is probably the easiest and best one to start with, just because it doesn't matter if the lines are clean and your sides are straight, because we're going to garnish this thing with miniature chocolate chips anyway, so all of that's going to be hidden. We chose on this time to just do the chocolate chips on the side, but we've also just covered the entire thing in chocolate chips, and that's probably easier. We made this cake for our daughter's 2-year-old birthday party, so we're just going to put some candles in here. And honestly, we make this probably 3 or 4 times a year because the kids love this cake so much. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.